All right, welcome back. Let's actually go back into After Effects because this is a good place to actually take a look at all kinds of different file types and containers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click in my project panel right over here, and I'm just going to go to import, and you can do the same thing. And then there's an option called file. And right down here in the corner, it's actually filtering by what you're displaying. And it says all acceptable files. And if you open up this little option here, and it'll actually list all the available files that After Effects can read in. And it looks like After Effects is in the running for the gold medal of how many file formats it can read in. It looks like they're going for the world record here. There's an awful lot there. A lot of them you're not going to ever need. Okay, let's be honest. You're going to probably use about 5 or 6 of these. But starting right at the top, there's an FLA file format. That's old school. That's Flash. Nobody uses Flash anymore. Apple killed it off. So don't really worry too much about that. Although Adobe switched Flash to something called Adobe Animate because I think Flash got a bad reputation of being a security risk and slowing down websites. I actually liked it back in the day, but FLA, you're probably not going to use a lot of that. Scrolling down a little bit, we're going to see there's some ARRI from ARRI cameras. There's an AVI, old school stuff. You're probably not going to work with AVIs. Those are old school window movies. BMP, that's older in time. That's older in dirt. It stands for bitmap. That's when Windows first came out back in like the 80s. BMPs were how they showed, how they displayed all images. Anybody sending you a BMP, you should check and see if they just popped out of a time machine with a floppy disk because you're not going to want to work with those. Camera raw is basically just for when you're shooting with your Canon or your Nikon or something. That's going to import the native file format of those cameras. C4D is another cool 3D program, which we'll talk about in other courses. DPX actually is a 10-bit log format. That's actually when people are still filming movies on film, you're not going to find many people doing that anymore. Like actual film, you would have to scan it in to edit it on the computer. And what would they scan it in as a file format? DPX, Cineon. You're not going to find a lot of people doing that either, but that's what that is over there. There's Flash Video. Guess what? Same file format, FLV. Illustrator, of course. Illustrator formats or Illustrator PDFs, you definitely bring those in. Those are vector-based compared to raster-based formats. Scrolling down a little bit more, there's our old friend JPEG, and actually it has 2 file name extensions, JPG and JPEG, and I don't know why people use the JPEG. If you look at all of these file formats, they're all 3 letters. 3. Okay, so some people that save out files, JPEG files as JPEG, please don't do that. I don't know what that's all about, but it's really annoying, and most people in the industry have to strip out that extra character. So don't get in the habit of saving any JPEGs with a JPEG. The industry standard is JPG. Scrolling down, there's another Maxon Cinema 40 file. There's a Maya scene. You can import a Maya scene into After Effects. I didn't even know that. Scrolling down, MP3, pretty popular, okay, for audio formats. You can grab MP3s off of iTunes or the web. It's highly compressed. Okay, it's like the JPEG of audio. It's really compressed. It destroyed kind of the sound quality. As you can tell, I'm like a big fan of quality, right? And MP3, I mean, if that's all you have, go with it. But there are better, higher quality formats to get really crystal clear audio. But but again, if all you have is an MP3, you downloaded it from like a stock audio place, okay, not going to be a big deal. MPEG is a really old form of animated movies that was popular on DVDs. Nobody really saves out anything as MPEG anymore, or MPEG optimized. OpenEXR is the high end of visual effects. Okay, and you talk a lot about OpenEXR formats in my digital compositing class. It's actually a format invented by a little company called Industrial Light and Magic that was invented by George Lucas to make Star Wars. You may have heard of it. Anyway, that is one of the greatest file formats on earth. That's my favorite one. But we talk about that in digital compositing. We're not going to do much about that in this course here. Photoshop, of course. Photoshop is like the brother of or sister of After Effects. So of course you can import native PSD files, Photoshop. And PSB, if you're wondering what's the difference between PSD and PSB, you may see both of them there. Photoshop document. Photoshop B, in my opinion, stands for big document, and that's for Photoshop documents that are like 20,000 pixels, billboard size. It has to save it in another file format because PSDs weren't created to handle such huge images that people are making now, and that's why they invented PSB. It's just a PSD that can support humongous resolutions. That's all it is. PNG is here. PNG is a lossless file format. Okay, it supports transparency, but it doesn't really come with an alpha channel. It's kind of like its own weird cousin of the image family. You know, PNGs are great because you can display them on the web, and you often use them in Adobe Photoshop or you use them in Adobe After Effects. It's basically a lossless form of a JPEG that supports an alpha channel or transparency, and you can save it a million times and it will not degrade. QuickTime, really popular. Apple invented QuickTime. Anytime you see a .mov file, that's a movie file, and it's a QuickTime. And you're not going to see a QuickTime player on PCs anymore because Windows is stripping it out because it's security risk. However, you will see MP4s, M4Vs. Now, again, these are the containers. Okay, it's not the codec, and we'll talk about that here in half a second. It's important to know. Radiants or HDRs are advanced image formats that support high dynamic range. Use those also in the digital compositing course. Red, my favorite camera. Red cameras, they shoot, red cameras are high-end, very expensive cameras. They shoot Guardians of the Galaxy. They shoot tons of movies on red cameras. It's just amazing visual quality. But you can ingest native red files right into After Effects, which is really kind of nice. SGI, really old school right there. Soft Image, really old school. SWF, that's what the Flash movies were published out to put on the web. You can't really edit them, but there it is. Targas, pretty popular. I like Targas. They're 8-bit. That doesn't mean a whole lot to you right now, not a big deal. They're lossless, that means something, and they support alpha channels. So what's not to love about Targas, right? They're great. TIFF are very much like Targas, except you can support 16 and 32-bit images with those. They're like the big brother, big sister of Targa. They're really slow in Nuke for some reason, but you can use them in After Effects, and they're great. Again, Targa, lossless. TIFF, lossless, okay? Wave, remember I said the MP3 is like butchering down your audio quality, and it has to butcher it down to make it into a real small file size. Wave files are audio files that are not butchered down. It's not as compressed. There is still a little bit of compression on there. It has to be because you're going from analog to digital, has to be some degree of compression. If you're in doubt and you don't know which one to grab between Wave and MP3, grab the Wave. That's a better quality, 9 times out of 10. Okay. And then there's other things that you can bring in from like After Effects and stuff like that. So that's basically what we're looking at for file types. And I haven't really talked much about movie files, but let's take a look at what we actually brought in over here to our stuff here in After Effects.